Hello, I'm Jane Duncan-Rogers of Richthinkers. I live in Scotland and I'd like to be considered for the online event and the radio show. Richthinkers helps people to marry their spirituality with their business or their working life and to make money in a meaningful way. And what I've discovered over the last few years, and in fact since I started the business just 2.5 years ago, is that thinking rich is undoubtedly a spiritual practice. When I attended the Movers and Shakers conference, I thought that I was going to be writing a book proposal about all my journeys about money in the last few years, the highs and the lows, and what I'd learned and how I discovered the connection between thinking rich and spirituality. But something happened the day after the conference which was to stop me short in my tracks. The story of what led up to that day I'm about to tell you now. And it starts way back in 1990 when I originally trained with Louise Hay on her last intensive training program in California. I was then leading You Can Heal Your Life study groups around the UK and Europe for about 10 years, developing a practice as a psychotherapist and counsellor, and also developing a complementary health business that I had with my husband and a couple of other partners. I was your typical middle-class girl. I had enough money. I always had enough to do what I wanted to do. I didn't think I had an attitude about money until my husband got really ill with chronic fatigue syndrome, and we had to reconsider how we were going to earn our money. And one of the things that we decided to do was to sell a complementary health clinic. Now, when we set this up, we realised very quickly that in fact we were likely to end up with a considerable sum of money in our bank account, about £250,000, which for me was a lot of money. What was a big shock was that I discovered I was terrified of it. But I was afraid, embarrassed, ashamed, very squirmy about the whole thing, and I didn't understand why. What I did understand was that I was going to have to do something about this, otherwise I'd get rid of that money really quickly without noticing it, be back to square one, being relatively comfortable. This then led to us, after we've sold the clinic, having a long holiday and eventually ending up in Ireland, where we started to buy and sell land. Now you might ask what I was doing that, miles away from the Louise Hay work and the stuff that was really my true passion. Well, with hindsight, yes, I think I got lost. That was one of the problems. Instead of us thinking, and instead of me in particular thinking that, oh, this sum of money is great, I've got lots, I was thinking it's not enough. And actually, out of that place, I now look back and can see that every action taken after that came from that place of it's not enough, although I didn't realise it at the time. And then, just as my husband was on the brink of signing a deal to expand this business quite a lot, he was quite a bit better by this stage, not totally okay, and I had decided that I really needed to have more meaning in my life and I wanted to start Richthinkers, the credit crunch happened. And we went from having a reasonable amount of money and a very good prospect of a lot more over the next years, enough to set us up for the rest of our lives. We went to actually owing a lot. In fact, owing €350,000 to the bank, which is the situation we're in today. Yet again, I was terrified, ashamed, embarrassed, guilty, you name it. I had all those feelings that we normally call negative emotions. I was propelled into practicing what I preached, thinking rich, rich thinking. I really had to put this into practice myself because I was having waves of fear coming over me at all sorts of places and all sorts of odd times. Now, the result of practicing all that is that I can really very happily say that I have found a place of peace in myself. A place of peace that makes me feel connected, joined up, in touch, in such a way that actually, even though we were facing bankruptcy, and we still are facing bankruptcy, it might happen, I can honestly say now, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because I've got this place of peace inside now, as a resource, as a place to go to, and outer events don't touch it. But the day after the conference, as I said, I was still in London, due to fly back that day. My husband rang to say that he had been to hospital and had been given a diagnosis of stomach cancer. Well, yes, as you can imagine, that was a shock. And since then, which was just the beginning of October, I have had to dig incredibly deeply into my own resources of thinking rich. I've really had to put into practice rich thinking as a spiritual practice on an ongoing daily basis. We don't know what's going to happen with the cancer. He just started his first chemo treatment last week. We both have been applying the tools and the techniques that have now become so very familiar and very dear to me. And we're still dealing with uncertainty. Uncertainty with the bank, uncertainty with health. And that's what rich thinking is really all about. Being able to manage while things are uncertain, unsure, you don't know how they're going to turn out. This is not a story with a happy ending because the ending hasn't happened yet. In the meantime, if you'd like to get a taste of what I mean by rich thinking, if you'd like to get a taste of beginning to think rich as a spiritual practice in your life, please go to my website, richthinkers.co.uk, and sign up for my free report, 7 Steps to Thinking Rich. Thanks very much.